Um, Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first appreciate the leadership for this great privilege. I want to say my greetings, special greetings to the leaders and the elders on the high table. Honorable Adeton Andrew, celebrate you, sir. Honorable Adegoke Stephen, Mr. David, Uba, and every other leaders on the high table. I celebrate you greatly. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the privilege. I did not take this for granted whatsoever. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. Right, so I'm going to stand on the existing protocol, and because we have a limited amount of time and a long journey ahead of us, so I'll just rush straight into the discourse of the day. With your permission, is that fine? Yes. Thank you so much. All right, so I've been called to speak on the issue of tax compliance and strategies for schools in 2026, right? So, and that's exactly what we will be looking at straight away. All right. Okay, so the topic I just gave us is navigating the new Nigerian Tax Act, strategies for growth and legal avoidance. Right? I deliberately use the word legal avoidance because I'm sure that's what every one of us is interested in. Right? So tax avoidance is legal, is permitted. Tax evasion is a crime. So, and that is one of the things we'll be talking about majorly today. Right, so I'm Amos Akintola, Adejesubisi. I believe my citation have been read earlier. And I want to say that in my short years of experience, I'm very qualified to take you on this. And as a matter of fact, I have few persons that are joining us virtually today who are also have been interested in this. So what I'll be saying to you today are not just mere words. They are things we do experientially, right? And then I also want to express special privilege and greetings to my friend, right, who sees the opportunity to have me here. I did not take it for granted. Please celebrate my brother and friend, Prince. Right, so I did not take this for granted at all, because it's not easy for you to be appreciated and recognized within your local community. Right, we've always had those instances where they feel, what do you know? And at the end of the day, they end up spending more. Right, so I have a case like that. Somebody who thought we were small, and then we charged about his tax liabilities were about 6 million, and we charged about 2 million naira to help clear his debts. At the end of the day, he ended up paying 4.5. Right, and then he got to my table, and I was angry and disappointed, and he himself was not able to face the shame. And today, the story is different. So I want you to please take my words with all of your hearts, and also be prepared for the year ahead. So the first thing I want to talk about, the elephant in the room, is that the new tax law is here to stay. I don't have to do any big introduction on that, right? We know the precedent. He has a good precedent of issues when it comes to tax, right? He has done effective job with tax in the Lagos state, and it's living till today. So he coming to the national body to bring this tells us that it's not something that will die, right? And then we've seen serious opposition to this tax law for the past 2 years, and whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. Okay, but what I want to say is that though the law has changed, right, this law is here to favor us, especially when you have the right knowledge. And most importantly, when you are an MSME, which is actually my area of expertise, that is medium and small scale enterprises, right? So, and when we say medium and small scale enterprises, we're talking about businesses that have turnover less than 100 million naira per annum. All right, so that is, if I think there's anything you must keep in mind, that's the biggest thing. I'm going to explain further as we go, right? If you're an MSME, you have one of the best part of this tax law, that you could pay zero tax in the year, right? So even though the prayer is that we should grow bigger, so I won't pray that you should stay without paying tax forever. So I'm going to say you should go big so that you will pay tax, right? And I must say this, that if you actually want to do business in Nigeria and you want to be a good citizen, paying tax should be part of your plan. So you should not be thinking of how to evade tax, all right? But then you could actually think of how to avoid some taxes, right? You should not pay unnecessary money, right? But then you should pay what is due. And I say this, that this tax law is good for us because many Nigerians have not been, have been complacent about governance. And that's because you hardly pay tax. But now when it is, we keep saying it's our national take, it's our money. But actually, it's on the mouth. But actually, when you actually pay, let's say somebody is paying about 2 to 20 million naira annually to the government, and next time your government is doing rubbish, you'll be able to hold them by your necks. My 20 million is in that money you are spending, right? And you will be sure that it's going to be different. Our obligation and demand of our legal rights will also be different, right? We'll not just sit down and be saying it's our oil, whereas we know that it's not our oil. But this one you spend for your money, and you have to pay government 2 billion a year. You have to ask them, come, sit down. We are paying you, right? So I believe that that's one of the revolutions that will happen in the near future, right? So the new tax law, what are the major things that changed, right? I've mentioned the first. The good news is that the threshold for MSME is 100 million naira sheet, right? So any business that is a small business from next year would be exempted, right? Will be exempted from paying company income tax and also the development levy tax. Now, this development levy tax is the tax that is replacing the old educational tax, right? So before, prior to now, so this moment, what we pay is education tax, right? So that has been scrapped and replaced with the development levy tax, which is actually 4%. So we're going to come to that. But then small companies, like I mentioned, are exempted from paying tax. I'm using the word exempted, right? Because I'm going to explain, because the fact that you are exempted does not mean that you have no business with FIRS. Because that's another place people fall victim, right? And from next year, many people will actually fall into the tax brouhaha, not because they are expected to pay, but because they did not do what they ought to do. If you actually file, you actually have not paid any amounts, but because you did not know and you failed to file, so you pay a penalty for not filing. And the penalty ended up becoming more expensive than what you are supposed to have filed. Right? So that's why I kept using the word exempted. All right, so and you have to file your exemption. I'm going to explain that in a few minutes. For larger schools, that is schools with turnover above 100 million, right, which I expect that in the near future, almost every one of us will be in that class, right? You're not saying amen. All right, so that is your total gross. So tuition, that is your school fees, books, maybe whatever comes into your school account, all right, as revenue, okay, gross per annum is above 100 million. Then you are classified as a large company. All right, so you are expected to file taxes. Now, so I can say gross income, not profits. Okay, income, not profits. So that classification is based on income, not profits. So if you have 10,000 students in your school and they are paying 100,000 naira per child, right? When you do the, all right, you know that right? It means you're already above the 100 million threshold, right? So you are no longer a small business. Okay, so now, for the large companies, right? So there are two major taxes you are expected to pay, which is the company income tax that is charged on profits, not on turnover. I will also explain it later, which is 30% per annum. All right. I also expect to pay the development levy, which is 4%. All right. And also capital gain tax. This capital gain tax is when you probably you sell your school or you sell individual assets in your school, right? It's capped one. So whatever return you are getting from that, pay 30% of that. So capital gain tax. This is not a yearly thing, but only occur when there's a major transfer of assets. So assets also, I will explain further how you could deduct your investment in those assets from your tax later. So this before it was 20%, but with the new tax it's at 10%, so it's not 30%. So this is charged only if you sell your assets. Probably you sell school land, you sell school bus, or whatever at a profit. That profit you pay 30% of it. Right. So and then now for large companies, right, you also pay VAT, which is value-added tax. Also, if you're a large company, all of these you are not to pay. Okay. So value-added tax, as a large company, you don't pay value-added tax. So value-added tax is the tax you pay on okay, thank you. So value-added tax is the tax you pay on non-tuition sales. All right, so non-tuition sales. There's no VAT on school fees. All right, you cannot collect VAT from parents that pay school fees. So there's no VAT on school fees. But non-tuition sales such as school uniform, all right, food, probably you sell food within your school premises, all other sales that are different from school fees, all right, probably you sell textbooks and some what have you like that. So you have to deduct VAT, which is 7.5% of whatever produce you are selling. So let's say, this textbook is 10,000 naira. So 7.5% of that 10,000 naira would be 750 naira. Abi? So you add 750 kobo. No, not 750. 7 on 10,000. On 10,000. So it's on 100 that is 750 kobo. So on 10,000 that's 750 naira. So you add it to 10,000 naira. All right. So you sell at 10,750. So 750 is for government. So of Nigeria. So you collect it on behalf of us, the government, and you keep. And you remit that one every month. Right? So you remit VAT every month. So on or before 21st of every month, you're expected to remit VAT. Right? Please take note of those dates. You're expected to remit VAT every month. Now, non-remittance comes with a fine. So even if it's zero VAT, so let's say this month now, there's no VAT. You don't have any VAT collection, no problem. Come online, record it. No VAT, zero VAT, and it's stopped. None doing that, that is not compliance with that. After the due months. Now, if after 6 months you didn't remit, that first month that you failed to remit, the charge is 60,000 naira. Now, every other month you fail to remit afterwards, the fine is 10,000 naira per month. So let's say you didn't remit for the past 6 months now, 60,000 for the first month, 10,000 for the subsequent 5 months. That's how much? 110. So that's why I say many people will pay fine more than they will pay tax next year, from next year. All right. So now that is one. So you pay every month. So even if you have no VAT for that month, no problem. Just come online, zero VAT. And it's easy, free, right? You can do it yourself, right? Now, and if you cannot do it yourself, you pay people like myself and all that do it for you. Yes, we do it. It's part of the services, right? I have staff that could easily handle that. Now, so we probably collect our professional fee for doing that, right? So, and it's other than that, nothing else, except probably some amounts that you collect on behalf of government, like the 750. Let's say you do 50 sales in a month, 750 times that 50, you give it to government. It's not your money, you know now. So it's VAT. So that is that, right? So now total effective tax per annum for large businesses per year is 34%. So CIT and developmental levy are paid annually. All right. So non-compliance with that one for the first year is also 60,000. But that one is cumulative. For example, this is 2025, right? So you didn't file your CIT and developmental levy for 2023, 2024, right? Or let me start from 2022. For 2022, right now, the fine for non-filing 2022 is 180. So you keep it on the side. The fine for not filing 2023 is 120. So add it to 180. That's how much now? 300. The fine for not filing 2024 is 60,000. So add it to 300. So as at now, if you do not file, you have a fine of 360,000. You get it now. Now, and CIT, deadline for filing CIT is May 31st of every year. So for your CIT for previous year, so to file CIT for 2025 now, you have between January 2026 to May 31st, 2026 to file. Anything after May 31st, 2026, from June 1st, you will pay 60,000 naira before you pay or you file any other tax. Is it clear? Right, so that's how it works. So anything from June 1st, 2026 till December, right, you pay a fine of 60,000 naira for the previous year. So if it now moves to January the following year, you now add 60,000 naira to it for that particular year. So the more year you have ahead of you, the more cumulative it goes. So let's say now you didn't file for 2021, right? So 2022 is 180. So 2021 will be how much now?
120.
2021 will be 240. 2021 will be 240. So you pay 240 for 2021, pay 180 for 2022, pay 120 for 2023, pay 60 for 2024. Right. So that's how it works. So many people, that's the pitfall many fall into. Right. So this year now, many people come and they want to file. I'm actually dealing with a client now. And when I did the calculation for it, was like, even what I make, and I saw his account actually, he's not even making up to, he doesn't even have to pay a fine of any tax or even up to 60,000 naira. But the tax is actually the biggest part of it. So that is that. All right. So moving forward, right. So let me quickly go into exemptions available for educational institutions. I think I already talked about it. For small businesses, right, you have exemptions from for VAT, from educational services are exempted from VAT. So parents do not pay VAT on school fees. They do not pay VAT on probably tutorials or lessons. All right, they don't pay VAT on that. Books and educational materials. All right, selling textbooks to students is VAT exempted. So you don't pay VAT on textbooks, any educational materials, right? So you pay VAT when you buy things, all right, from and sell to students. I already mentioned that, probably food and what have you, right? So you also pay VAT when buying issues, diesels and all of that, right? So I will talk about that, but I don't think time will permit us to look at the withholding tax. Right, so if there are institutions who do big business deals, all right, like probably you have every expenses on diesels, every expenses on contracts. Probably you print your own materials, right, for your schools, probably your school uniform, some of those things like that. You could actually request when you are paying VAT to your contract, you could get, a VAT deduction note from them that would also come into play for your own tax. So the government wants to, this is the catch. When you are paying VAT, right, they want you to take a note so that you remit it as part of your own deduction. So when you remit it as part of your own deduction, the person that you paid it to, the government would have taken notes that this is the person you paid it to. So if that person is not coming to pay, it's easy for us to go, why are you not paying? Right. So there are ways you could actually get VAT notes and be deductible from your tax. That is that. Now, so personal income tax, right? The minimum wage exemption, that is, so where you have staffs that are below the minimum wage threshold, right? So they don't pay tax. So they don't pay tax. They don't pay both personal income tax or whatever. So actually staffs pay personal income. That's payee, right? Personal income tax. Right? So for staffs below the minimum wage level do not pay tax at all. So for tax payee, let me quickly talk on that before I move over to the companies. All right. So the new tax law has actually abolished the CRA, that is the Consolidated Relief Allowance, which was 200K plus 20% gross. It has now been made that lower incomes earner do not pay tax, and then they tax the rich even much more. So this is the new formula for the new PE for next year, right? So anybody earning below 800,000 naira per annum are exempted from tax, all right? And every 800,000 naira per annum is also exempted from tax. Okay, so
sorry.
Okay.
If you are talking about 800 per,
yes,
70 times 12,
yes,
is 840.
Yes.
And the minimum wage in this country is 70,000.
Yes.
Clarify that.
Yes.
So 840 is above
yes.
your 800 limitation.
Yes, I get you. Now I'll explain. When I do the calculation, you will see what I'm saying now. All right. The gross, now to calculate your tax for probably a teacher or a staff, this is how the model, right? The gross income, you add the basic salary, all right, and every other allowance, every income you're paying to your staff, right, that is going to their staff. So now, to now get their tax rates, deduct statutory exemptions. That's the first deduction you can make. The first is 8% for pension, right? So you can deduct 8% for pension, all right? The NHF, National Housing Fund, you can deduct 2.5% of the basic salary, right? Then health insurance, any amount you are paying to health insurance, right, or HMO is also deductible from your tax. I mean, from your income before the tax, right? So also for staff, right, you can also deduct rent relief, right? 20% of your rent or capped maximum at 500,000. So because there are people who earn almost 10 million naira per month, right? So 20% of that is already above 500,000. So the max deduction is 500,000 or just 20%. So if you are earning 100,000 per month, you can deduct 20% of that as for your house rent. Okay, so I'm going to give an example to show that now. Right, so then the most important thing of all of this is, I'm going to still talk about it, is that all of these deductions, you can't just make deductions by mouth. There must be proof and record of those deductions. All right, record of your activities. I'll still get them. All right, so taxable income. All right, so now this is the new graduated table. Right, so the first 800,000, zero tax, is free from tax. Your next, right, 800 to 3 million, that is your next 2.2 million, is taxed at 15%. Then the next 9 million, that is from 3 million to 12 million, is taxed at 18%. Then the next 30 million is taxed at 21%. That is from 12 million to 25 million is taxed at 21%. Then if you have an annual turnover of 50 million, then you are not taxed at 25%. So I'm going to explain the tax table now with a practical example. Let's say you have a staff that earn 200,000 naira per month. Are we good? Are we together?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So you have a staff that earn 200,000 naira per month. So how much is that per annum?
That's
So correct. So we have 2.4 million naira, right, per annum. So now let us now start with our statutory deductions. All right. Pension, 8% of 2.4 million. That's how much? 80% of 2.4 million, 192,000. So good. Let us keep that. So we deduct that. Now, NHF, National Housing Fund, 2.5%, which is how many percent? How much is that? So that's 60,000. So let us keep that. Then HMO. So let's say for health insurance, you pay 5,000 naira per month, right? For I think NHIS is now 50,000 or 60,000, right? 60,000. So that's approximately 5,000 naira per month, right? So that gives us per annum 60,000 naira. So let us keep that now. So if we deduct all these three from 2.4, what do we have? What do we have? We have 2,800,000. I mean, we have 2,088,000. 2,088,000. Right? So now step 2. You can also deduct your rent relief, which is how many percent again? 20%. Yes, 20%. Please, I want it to be interactive, right? So 20%. So relief of how much? And let's say the average house rent in Igboora, let us say 300,000. Abi, per annum. So 20% of 300,000 is how much? That's 60,000. So we deduct another 60,000 from 2,088,000. So we are left with 2,028,000. Abi, now we now apply our tax table. So after this deduction, you agree with me, sir, that somebody with minimum wage has no tax to pay.
Yes.
After all these deductions, right? So if we actually do these deductions from somebody any minimum wage, what we would have less will be less than 800,000. So after all this deduction, so the tax table, the first 800 is removed, so zero tax. So 800 from 2,028,000. What do we have left?
Yes.
We have 1.228 million, right? Then we now bring our tax table. So the next 3 million, which is taxed at 15%. So 15% of 1.288 million. 15% of 1.288 million give us 184,200. So the personal income tax for somebody earning 200,000 naira per year, per month, would be 184,200. So that's the amount you're expected to pay to the government after all those deductions annually. Is that clear? So if you still have more funds, so people earning about 15 million thereabouts, after all these deductions, you still go ahead to see after this first deduction. So we remove 184 and keep it on the side. So whatever is left now after that first, we sit again. So like that. So if you let's say, okay, let me give an example of somebody earning 50 million per annum again. So we've deducted approximately how much now? So we've deducted approximately 372,000. So from 50 million, that means we'll have 49 million 728. Okay, all right, 728, right? So from that 49 million 728, we deduct 3 million first, and now tax that 3 million at 15%. You get that? So if we deduct 3 million from 49, so we have 46 left, right? So we tax that 3 million at 15%.
Okay.
So after taxing that 3 million at 50%, whatever the amount is, we'll record it. So the remaining 46 million, we're not going to meet it. We now deduct 12 million from that 46 million again, right? And tax that 12 million at 18%. Do you get that? So, so it's a continuous process. So after taxing that 12 million, we now go back again, remove another 25 million, and tax that 25 million again. So until you have nothing left to tax. So usually it always comes down, then you now accumulate everything together, and that's what you pay as personal income tax for the year. All right, so am I making sense?
Yes.
So okay, this is some of the street parts. Now, the deductible expenses, right? The legal avoidance. Now, before I even, most important thing you will do for yourself as a business person next year is to have a good bookkeeping practice. That's the best thing you will do for yourself next year. Because this is Nigeria. When you don't have good books, you become a business. Right? I'm speaking from experience. When you don't have good books, you can just pick your statement of accounts, and then the tax master will just say, okay, fine, go and pay 15 million. So, you can go pay 15 million. Okay, fine, now prove it. You don't have books. Right? So unless you get a very solid auditor, right, like myself, I'll say that. Right? And now that 50 million you do want to pay, right? When you now come to an auditor like myself, we also charge you, looking at the trouble you are in, and tell you, you see this trouble, we'll have to do a lot of works on your books. The books you fail to keep, we'll try to generate something for you, all right, to keep you safe. And then we'll argue with the tax matter on your behalf. But still, you'll pay heavily. Right? So the worst thing that will happen to you is probably you employ an accountant or maybe an OND holder or something and pay them maximum 100,000 naira per month. And then in a year, that's 1.2. Right? And that 1.2 will save you from debts of over 5 million. So that's all the point. So the moment we check your records and we see that your turnover is above 1 million, you have become food. Because Nigeria, apart from what states or the law state in Nigeria, everybody that comes to you, we want to go away with something. Right? So what even when you have your good record, right? The tax is your friend. You enter into the tax office, you laugh with everybody and you go out. But you see those people you are laughing with, the day you don't have a record, it's like police officers. The tax collectors are actually like that, right? From the time of the Bible. So the best thing you do for yourself is have a good tax record. Right? So next year, tax officers are going to be more dangerous than custom officers. That's also the truth. Right? So have a good record, right? And have receipts of your records. So if any transaction you are doing next year, get the receipts. Right? So get the receipts. So even your house rent, get the receipt. You are buying anything, get the receipt. Okay. And the second thing I also quickly say, because I had to miss these things up because my time is already shortened, is that master the art of separating your personal finances from your business finance. I know it's your school, I know it's your business, but pay yourself a salary. All right, pay yourself a salary. No matter how little, pay yourself a salary. I also list some ways where some of the expenses you actually spend money on, right, could actually be from the school finances, but there are ways you have to do it. There must be proper record of that, right, and proper terminologies to it. Because once the tax master comes, is traces of personal expenditures, then you are in trouble. That expenditure will be regarded as your profits. Not anymore. Are we together? So there are ways you could actually spend for personal expenses and all of that, but must be recorded and regarded as a business expenditure. And you know, this coming here also, another practice. You see all these practice of I want to send 1 million to somebody, help me keep it, I would. You don't do that again next time. Don't do that again next time. Because that expenditure will be regarded as yours. Will be regarded as yours. So, though gifts are not taxed, but there are levels of transactions that could not be regarded as gifts. Because there have to be traction to those transactions. All right, so now this is very important. So I just created a list. Okay, at the end of the day, I think I would have my brother probably shared this lecture note with you so that you see. I have a list of about 30 deductibles and classifications. When you study it, you will know where to input your own personal expenses. All right, so probably you could food sharing for your staffs, right, is part of business expenses, right? Food sharing for your staffs is part of business expenses. You could even make provision for meals for your staff, feeding your staffs, and it's part of business expenses. All right. Your end of the year tea break is part of business expenses. Right. Your end of the year party and all of those are part of business expenses, whether they must be recorded and regarded as so. Okay. Your bodies, registration to bodies like NAPS, WAEC, and all of those things are business expenses. Right? They are not taxable. So before you record your profits, you deduct all of those things from your business before you now talk about what you are paying as tax. Okay, textbooks, exercise, school excursions, all right, events, hiring, all decoration and all of that, they are part of business expenses. All right, prize giving, all right, cost of plaques, medals, and the likes are part of business expenses. Okay, staff welfare are part of business expenses. Insurance are part of business expenses. So these are another important place where people actually hide, right? You could insure almost all your assets, right? It's actually safe. Insurance is advisable, right? Whatever you are paying as insurance, you deduct it from the amount you pay to tax. Instead of just paying government all of that leftover, why not insure your property? And that means you are paying yourself. And the beauty of insurance is that if any damage happens to it, you get a refund. Right? I know many of us want to talk about insurance not really working effectively as it should in Nigeria, but that also has a lot to do with traction. Right? You could argue with your insurance broker if you have good record of proper maintenance of your assets. Right? So, and they will surely pay you back. So it's better you argue with insurance person to pay you of your loss of assets than having to lose it entirely and having paid what you should have paid to insurance to government. Is that not a wiser business transaction? Am I making sense? It seems like the room is dark. All right, so repairs and maintenance, all right, cleaning, sanitations, all right, adverts, communication, your subscriptions, charges, and all right, are all parts of business expenses, right? Interest on loans. Probably you take a loan, all right, so that loan is not regarded even as an expense or part of business money. It's called capital gain, all right, it's an asset. So the interest on that loan, right, you can deduct it from the profits you make. So it's also part of deductibles, right? So bad debts and scholarships. This is also another important one I want to mention. Scholarships are deductible from business expenses. So probably your school fees is usually 100,000, and you give 10 students scholarship, right? So you can deduct that amount. 10 times 100, that's ₦1 million from your expenses, right? From the profit the school makes as part of school expenses to cover for scholarships. So this is actually a very good place to hide, all right? So bad debts, also the same under the scholarship. So probably there are some parents that devote from paying school fees, all right? So you could deduct that amount that they failed to pay, all right, as part of your expenses. But you must also prove record that they failed to pay. So, such as letters or reminders you've sent to them, all right, letters of constant calls that you sent to them. So, this is why I said documentation is key, right? So, you have it like 3 or 4 reminders and they fail to yield, right? So, when the tax master comes, you show it to the tax master and you deduct it as part of the business expenses. Those are bad debts, that is profits forgone, right? So, it's also part of business expenses that are deductible, right? So, there are a lot of other things that could be deducted. So I think my brother will do well when sharing this. So we have commissions and all of that that are deductible. Okay. Now this is I'll wrap up now. Structuring your school for 2026. Now let me make something very clear. Actually, if you have how many of us have registered our company, our school as probably with CSC, Corporate Affairs Commission? How many of us? Okay. Wow. Just few of us. Okay. Last. It means that I didn't do a free service here. I'll still get scams. All right. So the first point of call is that all of you have to register your company. Have to register your school. Now, and also those of you that have registered, if you registered your school as a business name, best advice, go and upgrade it. Now, this is why. Go and upgrade it. Go and upgrade it to limited liability company. Now, this is why. A business name registration or enterprise is regarded as sole proprietor and is regarded as your own personal expenses. So you are not separate for it. What you pay for that is payee. And deductible table is the same as those paying to payee. You know that table where we talked about earlier, where we deduct the first 800 from the profit, deduct the next 15%, the next 80%, the next 21%, the next 25%, right? That's how whatever profit you make from your business, from your school as a business name, you are going to make the payments. Right? You are going to make that payment that way. But if you are actually a limited liability company, so if you have revenue less than 100 million, then you are not paying anything for that year, no matter how much the profit you are making. So let's say your total revenue for the year is 80 million, right? And your total expenses is 20 million, and your profit is 60 million. You are not paying anything. You go 60 million, you will only. But the only thing is that they are waiting for you to cross 100 million. So, and if you cross 100 million, let's say your total revenue is now 105, and your profit is 1 million after everything. On that 1 million, you must pay tax.
How much?
Yeah?
Follow that.
30%. No. For companies, it's 30%. That I already mentioned it. Per annum, you pay 34. You pay 34 actually. Company income tax and developmental levy. So 4, 30, and 4. So that's 34% per annum. As long as you've crossed the 100 million, whatever profits you make after all these deductibles, right? Whatever is left as net profits, you pay 34% of it. Right, as a good citizen of Nigeria. And that gives you a legal right to actually be able to face your appointed officers and tell them that I'm paying your salary. Are we together? So please, right? If you are now registered as a business name, the distinction is that whatever you are making, even if it is, the only point where you don't pay is when your total revenue from the school is less than minimum wage in total. That's when you will not pay. Right? But then you have to prove it that your total revenue is that's to tell if you have less than 10 or 50 students in school. If you have 50 students in school, you are still above minimum wage, right? Mm-hmm. So all right, so yeah, so that's why it's best to say you move if you have business name. But those of you who are ready to register, you are still running the school, is still the same as those who did not register. But one thing that will happen again is that from next year, you will not be able to operate a bank account. Yeah, the name of that school. Now, and any account that, even at your personal account, you'll be able to operate your personal account without a tax identification number. So any account that your money is going to will be taxed as personal income tax. And you know the worst part about personal account is that you cannot tell me there's a business expense. Okay, now let me explain that. If you are receiving your school money into your personal accounts, even if you have to pay for WAEC, it's you paying for your children. Do you understand now? It's personal expenses. So, and personal expenses is not deductible. It's you that want to enjoy life. You want to send your children to school. That's why you are paying. So you cannot deduct that. So all the money that enter into your accounts would follow the tax table. All right, and will be deducted. So we don't care who paid it to you. And you cannot say all that money is a gift. I don't know how nice you are that everybody will be gifting you consistently. Right. So do you understand? So now that is that. So that's why it's essential that you need to register it and separate that personal expenses. So any money that will be in your personal account, let it be your salary. All right. So, and that's why business owners who are smart, you know, from next year, you will know how to put some of your major house expenses on your school. So you can put maybe your house rent on the school. You know, it's accommodation for staff. Understand? Do you understand that? Yeah, it's part of school expenses. Your feeding, you can put it on staff, on school. If you estimate how much do you spend on feeding per month, all right? So it could be motivation, remuneration, staff welfare. Put it on the school. Do you understand now? And this is another wise opportunity for you as a proprietor. You could also cancel your staffs to say, maybe we should be doing this for you monthly, right? Maybe from your salary, this and this. So that way, we stay up you can buy food in bulk and do food sharing per month, right? That's the episode. So that's another business wisdom. All right. So 2026 is a year for all of us to be serious. It's a make or break. That's the truth. 2026 is a make or break. Your private account, that's what I'm saying. That's a personal account. So you ensure that what goes into it is just few money for leisure or your basic salary. Right? Let any other money not go into it. That's what I'm saying. Let no any other money go into it. Because any money that goes into it will be taxed according to the tax table. That's the point. Any money that goes into your personal savings account. All right, thank you. All right, will be taxed according to that table.
The one you have there before.
When you have them now, you know, the point is this is that from 2026, yes. What you have there before, well, this is how it's going to be. 2026 is a new year. It's a new year. Now, the wise thing for everybody to do. That question is one I have not really gotten a valid answer to from anybody because we don't know how the new tax system is going to come. They are still building the NRS, right? Even we consultants, nobody can tell you this is the model is going to go. Nobody. All right. So, and then there's still going to be a training for us afterwards because in due time now, not just anybody can come and say I'm a tax consultant. Right? So there have to be certification. Right, so people. So if I do not take the exams and qualify, so I may not come and say tax consultant, right? Except a few of my auditors, and then as a company, we cannot do that. Then I cannot face a front as a business person. I cannot come and say consultant after that if I do not take the exams. So, but that has not been in effect. So the wise decision that most people are doing right now is getting their tax clearance. All right, so for your business, get your tax clearance for your personal income, get your tax clearance. So you know that when 2026 come, I shall be fresh.
No arrears.
Do you understand? No arrears. So because we don't know what will happen to the arrears yet, there's nothing on it in the tax reform. The fiscal reform and law, there's nothing on anything like arrears yet.
How do we get our tax clearance?
Now, you get your tax clearance after you've paid your dues for the year. Tax clearance, once you pay your due for the year, you get your tax clearance, right? So, still under the current regulations, right? So, the way that is done is that you get a tax consultant to review your accounts, right? Give best counsel to pay something minimal based on what is currently acceptable. What is acceptable based on your current revenue, right? And all the so both for your business and your personal accounts, all right? So get tax clearance for both. So from 2026, all of us will now sit down, face the new law. So I think I've mentioned that you should upgrade to the limited liability. Okay. I think I'm done, right? So thank you so much for having me.
Now it's like for question and rights and answers. Someone said, if you attend the class, please let's clap our best appreciate. Well done, sir. You have done a wonderful job. Now, question. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay. Number 1, number 2, number 3.
I didn't. No, I don't have a question. Just one. I leave 2 minutes. Because I still have meeting. We have the 7 for 2. Sorry, it's less Mr. Speaker, sir. Lecturer, our consultants, our pastor, tax evaluator. I know that this tax reform will come with so many things. As I've been saying it has come with stress because some people do not even know what we are talking about. Therefore, as a mathematician, I cannot even down anything. But what I know is that whether we like it or not, we are mandatorily we are going to pay tax. And tax is mandatory. And what I can observe for what you have said is that somebody who has not registered his own company with the CAC is a disservice to that company. Therefore, the first step you have to do, whether we like it or not, is that your company must recognize. When I say recognize, it must be registered. And the moment it's registered, then you will be able to perform certain operations in the bank. So the moment you get there, I will say, from Adejesubisi college, to do what? To start something. They will ask you, have you registered? You are not known. So, but I know that what is important is ability to change, ability to adapt to new things. So sooner or later, it's going to become part and part. This is Nigeria. So before we always pay tax, we don't want to pay. I want to enjoy. It's not possible. This is what our forefathers, our fathers, like introduced the other time. Tomato